Hi again, fellow YouTubers. This is Diogenes Lamp, and I'm talking to you today about Motobecane Moby motor mounts. Take a look at these. Okay, let me tell you exactly what I did here and why. Basically, the Motobecane has motor mounts as the engine, moves forward and back as it shifts with the variator two-speed trans. These rubbers, they go bad, and they sell kits that you could basically buy the new rubbers and the outer ring, of course, and then you knock that out and you put a new one in. Now that's what I was going to do, because my rubbers were shot, because obviously this is a 1980 bike and they're pretty old. So I called up a gentleman named Sean over at Myron's Mopeds, and he told me that I could do it, and it is difficult to put them in, which I'm no stranger to challenge. I wouldn't have had a problem trying to install them or doing what I had to do to get them installed. But he told me, once you put them in, the ones that are available today, they fail very soon. And I thought to myself, I said, well, what do you have as an alternative? And he has these polyurethane mounts. Now, basically what you do is you get two of these mounts. You see the red mounts, polyurethane. They're both the same size, but what you have to do is you actually have to drill one of them out, because this side, the ID, the inner sleeve, is larger on one side than and rather than the other. And another thing, you want to put the larger side on the driver's side, so to speak, because you have to slide a plastic tube in, this is the plastic tube. And the plastic tube broke, so you probably want to get a new one of those before you even bother trying. The plastic tube actually goes inside of this, so that when the engine turns, I guess it makes like a semi-bearing. But my old one was cracked. I had to get a new one from Myron, and that took another week's time. But anyway, like I said, one of these have to be drilled out on the inside a little bit, and so you could basically then you just tap in the sleeve, which is, you could see that the sleeve, which is right there. And one thing Myron had told me, or Sean had told me, is when you put this sleeve in, you make sure it's the last thing that you do, so that you line it up and slide it in, because if you try putting it in on the other side, you'll crack it when you go to bend this up and down. You want to put this in on this side with the bolt on the same side. So that solves that problem. And also obviously the larger one will go on the driver's side. The larger ID will go on the driver's side, because I guess with this pulley here or whatever, it requires a little bit more pressure on it, and I guess with that pressure they want that nylon bearing in there. Otherwise, you have just a couple other things. You have two little spacers on each side of the engine that actually go into the engine housing, but there is one additional larger spacer, which is about that long, that you're going to want to put on the passenger side. Has to be on the passenger side, I guess. I don't know if I can get a shot of that, but it'll be on the passenger side, which when you're sitting on the bike, I refer to a passenger. Here's the other side, the way the other side came out. You can see it came out okay. A little dark here, but it looks basically the same. You have to make sure that it's set in the middle of the original bearing housing. And by the way, to clean out the old one, it was kind of a hassle. Basically what I did is I took a Dremel, and I basically, cleaned it out as much as I could by hand with a cutting knife, and then I got in it with a Dremel and I burnt it out. But you want to do that outside, because that stuff really stinks, man. That's some bad stuff. I actually had to walk away. It was knocking me out. It's like burning rubber. Like when you spin the wheels on a car, it had that same smell. But anyway, that's that part I did, and hopefully it'll last. I did these are the two main ones. There's another one down the bottom. I have the original part for that, but I'm not going to do that today or get into it. It might not even be bad because it's so small. Over here, one other thing is basically to drive it in. I basically used a 3/4 inch socket on there, and basically just knocked it in like that with a hammer to tap them in on both sides. That worked fine. But one other thing I had a concern about, and I said to Myron, I said, what about the outside of these things? What if they slip left or right? Because there's really nothing holding them in. I said, should I glue them in? And he says, yeah. So initially I had painted the inside of this metal outer, seal. So I got in there with the Dremel again, cleaned it up with a wire wheel on the ID of this, and then I took these red spacers and I took some sandpaper, sanded them a little bit, and I took this stuff here, which is super adhesive, 3M super adhesive, because I figured it would kind of make like something that's flexible, but wouldn't allow it to move back and forth. And I used this because this stuff is pretty good, and it seemed to work perfectly. I put that on, and then I hammered it in, and it seems like it's gonna harden up some more and make make for a good, it won't want to slide left or right. It'll hold it in there, but yet it'll still flex a little bit. Anyway, so we're going to see how it works out. It wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it would be. I thought I'd have trouble lining the engine up with the belt on, but if you just, move the motor around here and there, you could without too much, ado. I mean, I didn't have to have anybody hold the bike still while I was doing it. So I could just kind of, jiggle it back and, the bolt back and forth. And one other thing I did also is on the long bolt that goes through, I put wheel bearing grease on it so that it has a tendency to slide, because you got to remember it's sliding not on these little red rubber things. It's sliding on the inner steel spacers. So I figured, give it a little bit of grease so it just slides and it doesn't give any issue. And hopefully we'll be fine, and it'll just continue working properly. I haven't started the engine yet to see how it moves back and forth, but I'm thinking that I should be okay with it. It should be not too big of a deal. But anyway, that's it. So thanks for watching. Subscribe. Any comments or questions below. And nice to see you back to visit me. Hopefully, again, we'll have some more information on this 1980 Motobecane Moby bike, V50.